Oh, hi! I'm Richter Posh, and welcome to the Whole Enchilada! And this time, that echo was intentional. And today, we're taking a journey into a day in the life of Richter Posh. In order for you to understand this scenario, you will have to understand that in this particular day, I was going to interview the people who starred in Back to the Future. Except I'll be interviewing the actual characters themselves, and not the actors. How is this possible, you may ask? I'm afraid that is something I cannot tell you. So, it was a morning like every other morning, getting up to go to my Pilates class, when all of a sudden I had received this letter in the mail that I was to interview the people from Back to the Future. I was astounded. This was one of my favorite movies of all time, and I would finally get to encounter the characters such as Doc Brown, George McFly, and Lorraine McFly, as well as the bad guy, Biff Tannen. So after having the usual breakfast of prime rib, whipped broccoli, and mashed potatoes, I quickly walked over to the Doc's garage. From here, the day would get even stranger. For those people who haven't seen the movies, let's introduce some of the main characters. You have Doc Brown, the crazy, eccentric scientist that invented the DeLorean time machine. And there's Marty McFly, who has been known to help Dr. Brown since, and according to the trilogy, has become the first person to travel through time. There are his parents, George McFly and Lorraine McFly, whose maiden name is, by the way, Baines. And finally, the bad guy, the antagonist. You love him and you hate him, Biff Tannen. Now, unfortunately, I was only able to make interviews with the Doc, George, Lorraine, and Biff for undisclosed reasons. Entering the home of Doc Brown, he was appalled to see me. And you know what he said to me?
Great Scott!
Yes, that's what he said, almost as if he wasn't expecting me. Then I asked him how much power it took for the flux capacitor to become active. And of course, I expected his response to be
1.21 gigawatts!
But that's when things really started to get weird. I asked him, Doc, where do you see yourself 10, 15 years down the road?
Roads? Where we're going, we don't need roads.
I thought, maybe time travel has driven Doc Brown to become a little crazy. So I decided to ask him another question. Doc, how heavy is that pile of fan letters that you receive about every week?
Why are things so heavy in the future? Is there a problem with the Earth's gravitational pull?
Okay, so that's when I decided that I had to move on to another character. Alright, so next I chose George McFly, who, as you know, is Marty McFly's father. We met at a park, and I was carrying my trusty tape recorder with me to gather all his responses. And I asked him, George, who do you think you are, as a person?
I'm George McFly. I'm your density. Your destiny.
It was at this point here that I just gagged. In fact, I was so repulsed by his comment that I decided to move on to the bad guy character, Biff Tannen. Let me give you a scenario. We were in a restaurant together, you see, and I was asking him this question, when all of a sudden he shouts out,
What are you looking at, butthead?
It was then that I realized that Biff Tannen was getting himself in character, and he was using me as the guinea pig. So I knew what he was talking about when he said,
Hello? Hello? Anybody home? Hey, think, McFly, think.
To avoid further confrontation, I walked briskly to the back door of the cafe. I still had one more character to interview, and that was Lorraine Baines, also known as Lorraine McFly. But all hopes of a good interview with Mrs. McFly were demolished, because as soon as I walked in the door, she said,
I've never seen purple underwear before, Calvin.
How did she know I was wearing purple underwear? The reality of all this took me by surprise, and I was shocked. What could I do? I was left standing there by the door. And then I did what anyone should do when they're stuck in the same situation. I leaped through the air and crashed through the window! No, not really. But eventually I did find my way back home and thought, wow, what a crazy day. Opening the door to the house, I saw the answering machine on the counter. It had one new message. Who was it from? It was from Ryan Bargerstock, the strange child that I had interviewed 2 episodes earlier. It was a short but frantic call, and this is what it said.
My house is haunted. Oh, the brothel ghost! I like pretzels.
It almost sounded like it was an emergency call, like someone was saying that their house was haunted, something about a pretzel ghost. Either that or Ryan was just trying to gain attention. Mindless entertainment for mindless people. And then it struck me. The ultimate question of the entire day I had been asking myself. Has the world gone crazy, or have I? Quickly, I came to the only resolution I had. The only crazy person around here was myself.